There is a ministry that God has kind of raised up, and I just wanted to share with you. And I thought it was a really good time to do it on Mother's Day. So I'm going to ask if Michele and Pete would come forward and share with us a little bit about their ministry as we close the service. And as they come, I just want to mention that both Michele and Pete are widow and widowers, and they are a part of a ministry. Michele has 2 boys, Sam and JJ, and Pete has 3 daughters, Jenny, Lindsay, and Kirsten. And what's been really fun for me to see, I saw Michele a few weeks back, and I know for the last year or so that God has been raising up a ministry through Michele and through many others with you. And it's called Widow's Hope. And I remember a couple years ago, or a few years back, doing a funeral service for your husband, Gary, who was tragically killed in a bike accident. And I remember as I was praying and thinking of you, and at one point, and I shared with you before the service, that there's a point where I thought, man, God's got his hand on you to do something. And then to see how God has used you as a founder of Widow's Hope, which is now doing something in the whole Minneapolis area, but even internationally. And then when I saw you a few weeks ago, I thought, wow, you need to share this on Mother's Day, some of the cool things God is doing. So we're going to have an encounter story, because there's some great backstory to this. So one of the encounter newsletters will have more. But I'm just going to ask if you would be willing, the 2 of you, to share a bit about this ministry. Because, there's ministries like grief support groups, which are really good, and there's other ministries that have some particular areas they're working. But why Widow's Hope? Why did God tell you to do something like this?
Well, what we realized, both Pete and myself, after we lost our spouses, is that there's this rebuilding that's needed after you lose a spouse. You can go through the grief share programs, and that's very helpful, but then there are some sustainability needs. And so what we've done is we've put together some statistics that are really helpful in understanding what the needs are.
Well, and when you sent me, after I talked with you a few weeks, probably a month or more ago, and you sent me these statistics, it just opened my eyes. I didn't realize this. So why don't you share?
Okay. The first one is that there are over 13 million widowed people in the United States. 11 million of them are women. The average age of a widow is 56. We have so many women, even in this state, that are 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You just don't imagine that. There are 5 million children that have lost a parent in the United States. And what's really important to know is that losing a spouse is the #1 stressor on the stress charts. And that leads to the next statistic that is just astounding. 60% of those that lose a spouse will experience a serious illness in the time following the loss of that spouse. And I was in Santa Barbara last month, for example, talking to a young man, Jake was his name, 21 years old, and he told me that he had lost his father when he was 11. And I asked him a few questions, and then I asked him how his mother was doing, and he said she never recovered. She had developed dementia after that, and so he took care of himself from ages 11 to 17 until she went into assisted living and he graduated from high school.
Yeah. So as I was, reading some statistics and understanding this and going, wow, what an incredible thing. And then, some of you sometimes they connect the dots of what God's doing and how he uses you as a body. This is just an example of what God is raising up, how cool it is and what God has done. But the Bible is really clear on this. It says in James chapter 1, verse 27, that the religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphans and widows in their distress. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. And that's one of the ways, we talk about, I said the place being the place where heaven can come. We also have the ability to go to some of these very dark places and bring light, and the light shines in those places, to bring love into these places where there's great hurt and there's wounds, and to bring in this sense, a sense of hope where there's a brokenness. And that's why I'm excited about what God's doing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're actually doing, some of the specific programs that you do. And Pete, maybe you can share that with us.
Thanks, Kelly. Our group is only a little under 2 years old. Excuse me, we met due to the fact we both had lost spouses. In my own life, I didn't expect to go on this path, and no one does. But about 15 years ago, God took his hand to me and said, it's time to clean up your life a bit. I wasn't a man of faith, and he brought 2 of his messengers into my life, a single mom and a 6-year-old boy. I had 4 sisters, 2 daughters, so dealing with a 6-year-old boy was a little bit difficult, especially in my young 50s. Life was good, really good. life changed. I found my faith. In 2002, we had a little baby girl. So here I am in my 50s, and I have a new daughter. 3 years later, we went up to northern Wisconsin, family vacation, see the colors. They had a festival going on, they had a helicopter there. My stepson was 13, he loved adventure. So on a Saturday morning, my daughter, 3, and myself held hands standing in the parking lot and watched the helicopter take off. And it never came back. The crash killed my wife, my son, and the pilot. No one is equipped for what goes on when that grief hits you. But God's plan is amazing. Each of you will go through life, hit your valleys, have tough times, lose someone. Each of you is equipped to do what people have done for my family. He has put women in my life constantly to take care of my 3-year-old daughter. From the daycare people, to the school principal, to the teachers, to everyone at our church. It's just amazing how God has a plan even though she doesn't have a mom. And she's now 11, and the fruit of the Spirit shines through that little girl unbelievably. She takes care of other people. The morning companion program that we're talking about, first of our 4 programs, each of you can assist us with. It's our belief that you can be mentors with the skills you have and the experiences you have to touch others that are going through this. Our second program is job transition and job reentry.
Right. We've partnered with several local corporations and some national brands to develop career transition programs for those who need to re-enter the workforce or who need to elevate themselves so that they can become sustainable. And so we have resume building, we have career boot camps, we have even salons that have jumped on board to help build self-esteem. They are doing hairstyling and new makeovers.
The third program is really also near my heart, and that's dealing with kids. I have 2 older daughters and I have my 11-year-old, but the kids are impacted to a point beyond belief. 70% of the families aren't financially equipped when one spouse goes to deal with life, so they lose homes. Kids have to lose their schools, they lose their friends. Sometimes, as Michele said, they're out on their own trying to deal with they're not capable at that age of dealing with it. Sam is Michelle's son. And Kevin gave me permission to read a little bit of a song he wrote, which kind of gives you the emotions that kids go through. So if you'll bear with me when I read. I got some questions for you. I don't know if you can answer, but they've been eating at me. It's like my mind has cancer. Like why you'd have to leave so soon. There's more for you to do. I'd even take 1 more month. Why couldn't you leave in June? I might sound angry, but it's just because I'm confused. Why weren't you at my games? I played football for you. Sometimes I sit and wish that none of it had ever happened, that you were still here and everyone was happy. I understand myself, but how could you make my mama cry? Just come back home and I'll promise it'll all be good. Maybe then I'd come to be the man you always said I could. I'm trying hard, but it just seems like it ain't enough. You used to be smooth waters, but now they've turned rough. I tell myself that you're watching me from above, but it's just not the same since he took you here from us. I just hope that you stay looking over me. Without you, I don't know who I'd be. And if you could, can you save me a seat, please? Each child that loses a parent basically loses both parents because the other parent has to deal with their own grief and go through life. They're not equipped. I wasn't equipped to raise my 3-year-old. But because people keep coming into our life, the same thing you can do. It's unbelievable the impact you can have. So we hope that as you listen to our ministry, you'll touch one of these areas. It might touch your heart. You can come in. I had a girl come to me after the first service. She lost her parent at age 2. And she said, I don't know how I can help, but maybe your daughter would need help. I said, I'd love to have you get together. You have the credentials. You have God within your heart. You have the capability to use whatever your experience is and help others.
Well, what I think is so wonderful about this is just the hope. That's what's Widow's Hope, is bringing hope to some really difficult places, bringing heaven to places where it's really needed. And one of the reasons I was also excited as we started talking, you shared with me that Hammers of Hope, another ministry that was begun in this church. In fact, Greg Hartzell was going to be up here and share briefly about that, but he had to go home for a funeral that he had this weekend. So I'm just going to share with you one of the great things is they're going to partner together. Our ministry, Hammers of Hope, which is Widow's Hope, to help with some of the needs that are around the homes that they can't care for. The projects like roofs and windows and sometimes painting, and we have people in our church, men, women, and children who get involved in doing that in other people of need, but now and especially we're going to kind of partner us together. And when I saw all this happening, I thought, we've got to let you know what God has done, how His presence is showing up and bringing hope and bringing heaven to some very broken places. So we're really thrilled about it. I just want you guys to know how appreciative we are of what God is doing through you. If you would like to know more, there's a table there. There'll be people sharing some stuff. There's some brochures that can be made available. We would love for you in some way to be involved in this if God is calling you to do so. So before we do that, I'm going to ask you to kind of move forward just a bit. I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to ask you to stand as a congregation. And would you pray with me for it? Father in heaven, we thank you so much. On this Mother's Day, we are so grateful for moms. We also know that there are some situations where, and not just the everyday matters of being a mom can be overwhelming, but even in these specific ones, we as your people can actually, with your presence, move into it and make a difference. So God, be with Michele and Pete and the leaders. Bless this ministry. Bless us and Hammers of Hope as they also partner, that we might see you do great things for your kingdom, that your will would be done. In Jesus' name, amen.